Acacia, Courtney, and Naomi Tucker joining you. We're going to be running through the late pick 4 on the Preakness undercard. It's the 145th running of the Preakness Stakes, and the winner will come right here where we're standing in the infield at the cupola, this historic winner's circle. What a day of racing it's going to be, Naomi.
Absolutely, I can't wait. Not alone do we have the Preakness, which is a stellar field of 11. I mean, it's very hard to pick the winner there, but the undercard is getting me so excited. Can't wait for the Black-Eyed Susan either.
Black-Eyed Susan for the 3-year-old fillies. And speaking of the undercard, we'll run through the late pick 4 that starts with race 8 in the Laurel Futurity. The highlight at the end of the sequence will be that 145th Preakness Stakes. So Naomi, starting with race number 8, mile and a 16th on the turf course for the 2-year-olds in the Laurel Futurity. And it's always fun to start things off with the 2-year-olds on the turf this time around. Turf will likely be listed as good. And we're looking at the future in here. How did you see the race playing out?
I love 2-year-olds. I mean, you never really know how they've developed or how they're moving on from their last race. I'm going with the horse on the inside, Pivotal Mission, Grey Emotion, Hall of Famer Johnny Velasquez on board. I feel like Grey Emotion has put a really solid foundation in this colt by Noble Mission. Had a couple of runs, was at Stakes Company last time out at Kentucky Downs, and he's putting the blinkers on, so I'm hoping that from the inside he can get a good forward placed trip. And I think that if the turf is a little bit soft, especially speed, will play quite well.
I think the blinkers will be the key for him. One thing that I haven't liked about this colt is that he's had a couple of near misses so far. So hopefully with the addition of blinkers, we'll see a little bit more punch in the stretch. I landed on the Steve Asmussen runner in the number 8 Hidden Enemy, the Irish bred by Galileo. Looking at his first couple of races, both at Saratoga, he had some good competition that day. And just watching his races back and then getting a chance to see him in the mornings where he looks like a 3-year-old. So I was pretty happy with that pick after seeing him. But it's all about who's peaking right on this day.
Absolutely. Well, I do love looking at the 2-year-olds physically, especially in the paddock, seeing how they're behaving and how they're developing. And I saw Hidden Enemy as well in the morning and got a little bit jealous that I didn't put him on top because he looks phenomenal. Like that last race, he was under pressure the whole time, kept on finding it out, did miss out there, hung a little bit inward, so just a tiny bit of greenness in there. So I think that there is something left, and of course, by the world leading sire in Galileo.
See if the third start of his career will propel him forward. Catman trying to break his maiden 2 and near miss at Kentucky Downs for Mike Maker. Any other price horses you liked with the 2-year-olds?
Well, I had Catman on my picks as well, but actually I thought that the 6 Arrest Me Red was perhaps a horse to look out for. Arnaud Delacour on the turf can be very, very dangerous, really knows how to move them up. I thought it was a very good looking debut win, sprinting on the turf at Laurel. He was the heavy favorite there, and his older half sister has had success going along on the turf, so that bodes well.
That stakes winner, Hidden Treat, a turf winner, also trained by Arnaud Delacour, so he knows the family as well. That's the 8th race, the Laurel Futurity. Moving on to the 9th race, the Jimmy Murphy, always one of my favorite races on Preakness weekend. Mile on the turf, the James W. Murphy for the 3-year-olds. And this race is pretty interesting in that you have Bye Bye Melvin, Vanzi, a couple of others coming out of that Saranac at Saratoga, and I was standing there in the paddock where it absolutely poured that day. So the turf was a little bit softer for that race in the Saranac than it may look like on paper.
Well, that's actually good to know, because if we're coming up a little bit soft, horses coming out of that race and having performed well, like Bye Bye Melvin, winning only by a head, could translate to this playing out, the turf here playing out well for him too. I thought that was a really, really strong run, late 1:11 time from US pace figure. Love looking at that last quarter. I think that says so much for these turf horses with that late acceleration. So I ended up on Bye Bye Melvin, of course, with the same duo, Grey Emotion and Johnny Velasquez, as a horse I put on top in the race before, so I seem to like them.
It could be a big weekend for that team for sure, particularly looking on the turf here and in this late pick 4 sequence. I like another horse coming out of the Saranac. I landed on Vanzi, who I'm going to give another shot. I actually liked him the best in the paddock that day, stumbled at the start, wasn't able to use his typical early speed, which on this turf course, or any turf course with some give in it, having speed is a huge benefit.
Yeah, he lost at least 2 lengths stumbling at the start, and you just can't make up ground like that at Saratoga at any competitive race. Now, I did see Vanzi on the track in the morning. He looks like a proper sprinter type, which I don't mind too much. But that also means that I'm hoping to see a lot more speed from him than last time. So I guess we have to excuse that run and perhaps look at the run before that at Monmouth in the Jersey Derby there. He sat in the garden spot. There was a little bit of a slow pace that he had to deal with. Got a tad keen. So looking at him physically and what he did in that race, you really think that he is going to be fourthly placed here.
I'm hoping he uses his speed to his advantage. He was third in the Grade 3 Kent, a couple races back behind Gufo, who will be one of the favorites in the Belmont Derby on Saturday as well. And looking at a couple of other horses, there are some that can show speed. Don Juan Kitten also coming out of the Saranac. Ocean's Map in here for Greg Sacco, who has to take a big step forward, but a couple of other horses that could make things interesting as far as the pace. In a big field on the turf, it's all about trips.
Absolutely, very big price, Ocean's Map. 20-1 morning line could come with a bit of a closing run, but if the turf pans out a little bit on the soft side, we've seen that the horses have struggled to make up ground.
A really great rendition of this year's Jimmy Murphy. Big field on the turf as we move on to the 10th race. It's a mile and an eighth, the Grade 2 Black-Eyed Susan for the 3-year-old fillies. And the horse to beat is Bonnie South, who finished second behind Swiss Skydiver in the Alabama. Swiss Skydiver taking on the boys in the Preakness today.
Yeah, bidding on becoming the 6th filly to win the Preakness since Rachel Alexandra in 2009. And she has really impressed me in the morning. She's a great temperament on her. Physically, she seems to have moved on as well from the last time I saw her in Saratoga when she won the Alabama, and I must admit I fell in love with her a little bit there.
We'll talk more about Swiss Skydiver in the next race, but the horse that did finish second behind her in the Alabama was Bonnie South, who will be a heavy favorite in the Black-Eyed Susan. Are you approaching this with using Bonnie South or trying to beat her?
I'm trying to beat her. I think if you look at her speed figures, that last race in the Alabama, that would put her on top, but that is going a little bit longer, a mile and a quarter, and they're going just a furlong shorter here. So I'm hoping that if you're looking at the speed figures, what she's done over just a tad shorter trips, there is a bit of competition in this race for her. Now, of course, Brad Cox, Florent Giroux, a pair that we know from Monomoy Girl and some of the elite level mares, so you don't really want to go and beat them. But I had the chance to speak to Blake Cox as well, Brad Cox's son. He says she's doing wonderfully. I've seen her out on track and she has a good temperament and she glides over the surface here.
We'll see what Bonnie South has to offer. She'll be the one to beat, but looking at a couple of prices, I think both you and I landed on the same horse in Hopeful Growth, who had a disappointing effort in the Kentucky Oaks, came out a bit at the start, but her races prior to that have been strong, and I think that she's the type of horse that's really coming into her own in the latter part of her 3-year-old year.
I feel like she can really step it up. That last race in the Kentucky Oaks, she just got thrown into the deep end. That's just a step too far for her. If you look at that Monmouth Oaks, very, very impressive 4-length win. And I think that if she gets a nice stalking trip here and gets away from that really steep division that she was in last time out, she could be, quite solid here at 8-1. And Trevor McCarthy on board. I mean, he's been riding a winner. I think he's had a winner every single day at the meet thus far.
He's in top form right now, and I just have to throw in big price with Dream Marie, also coming out of the Kentucky Oaks. She's one that's been consistent overall. We'll see if she can pick up a piece, and I think that's a good way when you're trying to make money and betting some of these races. Find a long shot that you can use underneath, maybe with some of the favorites.
Well, that's where the value is, and Joe Bravo will be back on board on Dream Marie. I got the chance to catch up with her and say he was so pleased with her in that Delaware Oaks, where she was second, only beaten by half a length. Then coming back in that Monmouth Oaks, he said that was my fault, nothing to do with her. I couldn't get her away from the wall of horses in front of me. She didn't like that much kickback. She needs a clean trip. I think that's the key to this race. She's drawn in gate 4. He said, I need to sit in a good spot when that bend comes.
Some great insight from jockey Joe Bravo, who will be riding for Steve Asmussen in the 11th race, which is our Preakness Stakes. He'll be on pneumatic for Steve Asmussen, one of 3 for the Hall of Famer, but all eyes in this year's 145th running of the Preakness Stakes will be on the Kentucky Derby winner, Authentic, for trainer Bob Baffert, who does have 2. He has speed. He was the best horse in the Kentucky Derby. Is he going to win the Preakness?
I hope he is. I would love for Johnny Velasquez to finally get that elusive Preakness win. He's won everything else there is to win, and that makes him extra hungry. He said he wants this race, and of course Bob Baffert vying for an 8th win in the Preakness, like you mentioned, trying to make history. Authentic, is he beatable? Unfortunately, yes. This is very, very competitive. He has a lot of speed. I like his draw. I like the 9 on the outside. Can hopefully slowly glide forward and get that lead, like Johnny Velasquez sort of allowed him to just slide up there in the Kentucky Derby as well. But there is speed on his inside, though.
Could be a potentially quick pace in the Preakness Stakes, but a couple of Hall of Famers handling Authentic for trainer Bob Baffert. Some of the other big names we talked about: Swiss Skydiver, the female taking on the boys. There's also Art Collector, who didn't get a chance to run in the Kentucky Derby due to a minor foot issue right before that caused him to be taken out of contention, wasn't entered in the Kentucky Derby, and his trainer Tommy Drury saying that the Preakness was kind of the saving day. And looking at him training in the morning, he glides over the track, he skips over it, and he seems pretty unfazed by everything. I've really come to like him a lot.
Yeah, I think everyone has come to like him. He is the talking horse. Everyone's just been talking about Art Collector. And every time you ask someone who do you think is going to win, they say Art Collector. Art Collector, a bit more of a stockier type horse, a lot of muscle on him. Not your typical classic horse, but if you look at what the distances he's been running over, the numbers he's been putting up, he's right up there. And of course, we just don't know how he stacks up against these because he never got the chance to run in the Kentucky Derby. Of course, first runner for Tom Drury as well in the Preakness.
Was likely going to be one of the favorites in the Kentucky Derby. Those are some of the big names. Who are some of the price horses you're intrigued by?
Ooh, I actually really like Pneumatic. He's on the outside of Authentic. Joe Bravo rides, and he jokingly told me that he's going to hold on to Authentic still. He's hoping to get a really nice toe into the race and sit, handily close to the pace and then pounce whenever the moment's right. Now, he does have to step up here, though.
Has to take a big step forward against Steve Asmussen with 3. He has a big closer in Accession. Also has Max Player, who ran in all 3 legs of the Triple Crown this year. I'm a little bit intrigued by Pneumatic as well. And Live Your Beast Life on the outside. Late developing horse, has been running well. Maybe you can grab a minor share, but one thing we do know, top to bottom, it is a super competitive Preakness field this year.
It absolutely is, and lots of betting value. Looking at those long shot horses, I really think that there's a few horses in here that could outrun their odds and really provide some value, at least underneath.
The final leg of this year's Triple Crown, the 145th Preakness, right here at Pimlico. There's a look at the late pick 4 sequence. Thank you all for continuing to watch and wager on the great sport of horse racing. Acacia and Naomi, cheers, and thank you all. Good luck with all of your bets in the Preakness Stakes.